two lines that immediately I want to draw your attention to are the insurance proceeds and the insurance expenditures, that being for the Southeast Ag Shop. The insurance proceeds are in the top revenue area, right above total revenues. $2 million was budgeted for that, and our first payment was $784,516. I am conservatively showing you this with the thought process that our expenditures being budgeted also at $2 million, and our expenditures being $1,325,000. What I've done with this budget is the ag shop will not be done when we reach June 30. And so I want to conservatively show this to you as if we don't receive our final payment until next fiscal year. So if you look at that roughly $550,000 difference, had we received balanced funding, we would not be at a $1,884,000 deficit. Does everybody follow me with that? I think that's very important for you to understand that we're using some of our cash reserves to pay some of these bills until we receive full settlement on the ag shop. The foundation guarantee, I was slightly high when I budgeted that. And aside from that, revenues being in line, the difference in non-local resources, as I alluded to earlier, is a function of interest rates changing and the money that we have in the bank receiving higher interest rates than what we were looking at when last year's budget was completed. Going down to expenses, the base salaries, we did have a couple of positions that were not filled. And those being the instructional facilitator position, the home ec position, family consumer science position at THS, that was not filled until January. And then we had the assistant business manager position where that position was budgeted for the entire year and that individual resigned in first semester. So that's the reason for, primarily the reason for our expenditures being less than what was budgeted. Walking down through here, there are not any huge discrepancies that I see. But the salaries are very important to notate. Utilities are slightly higher than what they were budgeted. Food service, we didn't have a need for a transfer, so there's nothing in that line item. Under special ed, our out-of-district placements are higher than what they were budgeted. You've had several throughout the year that you've approved. That is part of the reimbursables that when I showed you that the money that we spend one year, we get the following year. Out of district placement is one of those that historically, when I visit with the superintendent and talk through the budget, we put money into that line item, but we also understand that anything that we spend this year is going to be a reimbursable, with special ed being 100% reimbursed, that we're going to get the full amount back the following year. Just because historically that figure can go up and down. Speech, I believe it was 2 months ago that there was an amendment to the Tiny Eye contract, and that's a result of that increase there for contract services. Buildings and grounds, we tend to do very well with our existing staff and be able to keep that slightly under budget there as well. So looking at what we have, we look to finish the year with the cash reserve of 13.12%. The next slide gives you some history as far as the cash reserves that we have as a district. And this is where, when we talk about deficit spending, it really is spending cash in addition to the foundation guarantee that we're receiving. I like to show this, this slide for people that don't have history with the district. If you look at fiscal year 2005, the district did not have a lot of cash reserves. We have what's classified as pre-97 money, that as long as we don't spend that, it doesn't go away. So when we calculate our cash reserves and our contingency, the contingency is what we're actually calculating, and that's at the 13.12%. The state, up until 2 years ago, had only allowed districts to carry 15%. And they did increase that from 15 to 30% through fiscal year 26. When I look at this in fiscal year 22, we were a little bit higher, we were at 19.5%. But as a district, I don't know that we want to push that 30%, because when 26 comes around, we're going to have to spend that down, or the intent of the state is if you exceed their allowed carryover, then that's money owed back to the state. And nobody wants to send money back to the state that's part of the foundation guarantee. Each year, a question is posed, in particular when we're sitting in salary relations. Approximately $300,000 constitutes 1%. So people like to look at that and kind of think what might be a reasonable carryover percentage, and what would it take to go up or down, and it's about $300,000. So when I talked about the foundation guarantee and where our money comes from, we talked about the ECA, the external cost adjustment. And there was an external cost adjustment this year, which is really crucial to districts, because industry is showing their employees a cost of living adjustment. And if we don't see that from the state, it can be very hard to maintain our positions and keep up with the norm. So professional labor increased, as did non-professional labor, energy, and educational materials. Professional labor is your certified staff, your salaried staff. Non-professional labor being your pairs and your classified staff. Energy is your utilities, and educational materials are exactly that, that's your supplies. So the total effect of that was is looking to be $965,000. I'm doing all of these calculations based upon existing ADM and that ADM that's shared with you each month. If our ADM would go up or down in May, those numbers have the potential to change as well. The exciting item, I mean, the ECA is important, don't get me wrong, but the exciting item is the next item, and that's our ADM or our average daily membership. We receive our funding based upon a 3-year rolling average or actual, whichever is greater. And historically, we've been in a downward trend to our ADM, and we've had to work off of that 3-year rolling average, because we would kind of be at a cliff where a 3-year rolling average just kind of slowly eases the transition. We actually are seeing an increase of 23 students from the 3-year rolling average to actual. So those 23 students looking to garner $332,000 for the district. And then reimbursables will be going up as well. And the biggest thing to remember with those reimbursables is last year through salary relations, we increased our base salary. In increasing our base salary, in particular classified, we did a $3 increase from $12 to $15, which went clear across the board. As our salaries go up, that's additional expenditures for both special ed and transportation. Fuel was up this year, so we would see that increase on transportation. And then I spoke about the out of district placement, which would be part of the special ed reimbursables, as will any contract services.
So those students who are out of placement, are they counted in our ADM?
As long as they're special ed. Mhm. So that there's some very nice numbers there that are affecting our funding. Three items that I touched on, two of them already, but there for the present year, there's no increase to the Wyoming retirement system contribution, which typically we've gone up about 0.5%. Health insurance funding, as far as the model is concerned, is unchanged. And then the cash reserves going from 15 to 30 through fiscal year 26.
So Marcy,
Mhm.
talking about the health insurance, would it be a benefit for the district to consider the Wyoming health insurance? Since they base the model off of the Wyoming health insurance? I mean, I know there are a lot of other factors that go into that, but wouldn't that be?
The difficult piece with the state plan is that they provide a very large benefit to retirees, which is beautiful. But it comes at a cost to any participating employer. What happens is districts are obligated for employees to pay 20% of the premiums. Districts pay 80%, or employers. There's municipalities and other agencies that belong to the state plan. But there also is a 0.5% premium that's added on to what the participating employer is paying. That 0.5% is figured based upon total payroll. And that is going to fund the retiree benefit of our retirees at the point in time when they retire. That 0.5%, the last time we calculated, was about $500,000 additional that the district would be paying for providing that benefit to our employees or our retiree population.
And maybe this isn't the right time for this question, but is that number less than the increase we're seeing from WIP?
You know what, let's towards the end, I want to talk about health insurance. So keep that in the forefront.
I'm sure there'll be lots of.
Yep.
And that's getting, your question, you look at it from that standpoint on funding, yeah, absolutely.
But there are a lot of other.
Exactly, there's those other factors there add into where does that cost that we're currently at going from this? Yeah, it's all over the board.
Sure.
So funding, we need to know our funding before we can know our expenditures. Our funding, those items that I shared with you, shows our funding going up from current projection of $29,873,000 to the $33,096,735. That's the increase in the foundation guarantee and the additional insurance proceeds. What I spoke about before, I shared that we show an additional deficit spending because not having all of our insurance proceeds up there in that revenue category. So when we get into the preliminary budget, the total revenue piece we just talked about. Looking down at the expenses, for the most part, because we haven't completed salary relations, the idea is for the projected salaries to roll over into the preliminary budget salaries. However, there's 3 positions that are being added, or some of them have been posted. What there is there's an additional teacher PRS. And that's based upon the student enrollment and what the model would provide for Platte River School as an alternative school. We added an additional maintenance staff member, and then we have never filled the assistant business manager position, so we added that in there as a secretarial position. So that's the reason for that $150,000 increase from projected salaries to preliminary budget salaries. That then flows through to the FICA contribution, retirement, insurance, etc. The one category that I didn't change being temporary salaries and overtime. And I believe that that category has the potential to decrease. And the reason where I'm coming from is the 4-day school week calendar. We won't have certified subs on Fridays. So this year we had athletics and things like that on Fridays, and we had subs filling those positions. So I wasn't ready to show that as a reduction, but we may see a benefit there. That being probably the lone financial benefit that we could see with the 4-day school week. Going down, I did put the transfer back into food service. And that being a result of the 4-day school week as well, if there would be any sort of implementation of the general fund, providing some kind of meals or food for students on Fridays. Utilities, I'm showing a 15% increase. I've seen where we're going to see some increases in some of our utilities already. Transportation, I have some increase there because of the cost of fuel. And then the other big item that we have to be prepared for is property and liability insurance. We'll receive that renewal on May the 8th. Not knowing what that's going to look like, I have a 20% increase. I know, we were starting to kind of fall out of this high risk category. They look at a 5 to 6 year look back period. Wanting, no wind, no hail, our roofs were done. And then we had the fire at Southeast. So we will see something there. And I don't know if you guys realize or not, but there's a category in the budget for the board. That category both pays for the fees that were charged by the county treasurer to have the school board election. And then primarily it's contract services for facilitators, for WSBA coming and facilitating trainings, etc. And so I did increase that slightly, just knowing of the most recent contract that was approved. But then looking at the next to bottom, the district equipment, I wanted to bring that line item to your attention as we do budget $7,500 each year for the schools to collaborate and use that for replacement of music instruments. We've done that for a number of years. And then we have $15,000 for ADs that collaborate based upon those large ticket, large dollar athletic purchases. This year, most all of that went towards a wrestling mat and some hurdles. But that's what that $22,500 is. So right now, before salary relations meets and looks at salary and benefits, we're at a positive $1,358,000 or 18.29%. Are there thoughts, questions, things that don't look right, don't make sense?
I have a question on our unemployment.
Okay.
$5,000 for unemployment insurance. It just seems like really low to me, and I'm just curious why that is.
Well, you know what? We're on a reimbursable basis. So we pay based upon claims being submitted. And actually, knock on wood, we had no claims last year.
It's great.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, that boggles my mind.
Yeah,
Is the transportation on our finance going to be reimbursable?
yes.
Awesome.
Under event travel and officials. Is that? So is that different, like transportation costs to those events, is that in that category, or is the actual transportation cost under transportation?
That's a perfect question. I'm glad you asked it, Dylan. The cost of transportation being the drivers, the fuel, their meals, their lodging is part of transportation. What this category is, as a district, we set money aside for student travel, meals and lodging when teams go to regionals and states. Or like FFA that just has one final culminating event. And then we have the cost of officials. That there was at the last meeting, there was a little bit of confusion in that the intent is we collect gate receipts. And the intent is that those gate receipts go towards funding the cost of officials and the culminating travel. So some events, we don't have the officials expense, but we do have the cost of meals and lodging when they go to like the art symposium or state drama, FFA, etc. And as a district, we set parameters that we provide up to $30 per participant and sponsor for meals that we look at how many go and how many days they're gone, and that's how they get their meal budget, and then we pay their lodging. But there's sometimes confusion amongst, it's primarily amongst the students or the participants themselves that they think we're getting money from somewhere else that's paying for that, but it's a pot of money that we set aside. And that line item goes up and down based upon how many of our teams qualify for state events. Other questions? So the next slide, Sarah gave us a perfect segue. This information will be used tomorrow. We'll talk about what it costs for first steps, and that being employees as they have experience in the district. What's it cost to give them an additional year of experience? What does it cost for employees as far as educational experience? That's primarily on the certified schedule. We often start with a 1%, but what's it cost to increase the base? And so there's the dollar value there for 1% increase. And then the dollar value that hasn't been assigned, but that tends to be kind of the wild card, if you will, is insurance. And I just copied a couple spreadsheets that I thought might kind of help a little bit with the insurance discussion. Okay. And then this.
Okay.
I think you guys might need to swap them paper each. Oh, you might have to. Maybe. The first page that they provided is looking at our structure for the present based upon what we're asking employees to pay. And last year with salary relations, it was determined for employees to pay 12%. That when Sarah mentioned, for instance, the state plan, employees would be obligated to pay 20%. So that's kind of one thing we have to think about. The other thing that in the present year, the three plans that we have are the $1,000, the $1,500, and the $2,500 deductible. On the next sheet, and that's the one that has the gray bar, we have an opportunity for some high deductible health plans to be implemented. The $1,000 is being a 5% surcharge in premiums. And then I went down, and this cost was figured as if what the district was paying stayed static, and the employee was absorbing that additional 13.5% increase. So I looked at what percent was that, knowing that last year we said it was going to be 12%. If we went with the $2,500 plan being baseline, which is where we are right now, $446, I'm just looking at the family plan, that's 23%. Last year, the 210, which is the comparison line, the premium would be going up if we kept our dollar amount the same, and the employee percent would increase from 12% to 23%. If we went with one of the $3,500 deductibles, either the high deductible health plan or the $50 copay, those percentages are 18% and 16%. So one of the things that Salary Relations is going to be tasked with tomorrow is looking at, like what Sarah mentioned with the state plan. Last month, we said we're going to stay with WEP because we didn't have time to make a change for the immediate, but trying to determine how we deal with this 13.5% increase, and who absorbs that increase into what allocation. So I kind of wanted to show this to you and let you see what that 13.5% looked like for an employee, and seeing the fact that, you know, it really is doubling the dollar amount that an employee would be paying based upon where it is right now.
So Marcy, what's the reason for the 13.5% increase? Was it claims, or was it, I know that there's a cost of insurance increase every year, I understand that, but what was the reason for the 13.5%?
The increase, as it's presented to us, it's presented based upon claims and the fact that the premiums we were paying not covering the total amount of claims. What they also share with you, and right or wrong, is the thought process that during COVID, there was not the opportunity for some of those elective procedures. So there was potentially additional activity last year. The other driving factor is that in years past, WEP has had the ability financially through the pool to buy down premium. And last year, I mean, WEP is operating as a business, just like everyone else. Last year, their financial results didn't allow them to have those resources to buy down the premiums.
So do our premiums go into like a claims fund, or how does that work? I'm not familiar with WEP, but does it go into a claims fund basically? And if you exceed that with your claims, then obviously next year you're going to get hammered on your rate increase.
What happens with WEP, and there's two different companies in the state. WEP is part of WSBA, and WisBate is part of WEA, and they both are operating very similarly in that they're operating as pools. Our money is going into their fund, and then they're pricing us based upon our participation for a district. So we want our participation to increase, and we want it to increase with young, healthy people.
Let's spread it out.
Exactly. A fear that I have is if our premiums go up as far as what we pass on to employees, we run the risk of some of those healthy people choosing to not participate, and our pool decreases. You know, our whole activity has the potential to further increase our future year renewals. Insurance is very difficult.
As a district, do we offer? Like if an employee opts not to take the insurance plan, we offer any sort of reimbursement to them for that? Or just take it away?
We don't, and the reason we don't, for the longest time, the district funded insurance 100%. That they started with the lesser deductible and would go a couple years, and then they would drop to the next deductible as the baseline that they would provide. When I first started in 08, the baseline was $1,500, and we're now down to $2,500. But the reason why we don't offer that premium or premium holiday, however you want to call it, refer to it, is then we could be encouraging people not to participate in our insurance pool, which is affecting our premiums. So, I mean,
Even like on a family that both spouses work in the district, only taking one insurance plan.
what happens with the insurance market is that it's more expensive to have two singles than it is to have a family. So last year, when we went through salary relations, we talked about what we should do for those people that some people refer to it as like split coverage or shared coverage. And at that time with salary relations, it was deemed to, you know, pay the percentage dependent upon whether you were an employee or family, just do the 12% across the board. And they felt like that was most equitable. That's a hard conversation. And it's,
And in previous years. In previous years. Was it just 1 year we did that, where there was, when we started that cost increase after the first year? If there was no spouse. And, well, both spouses, if they were employed at the district, they had
we,
150 each month towards the cost, was that what?
it was a reduced.
Yeah.
We
And then this
had
last year, didn't
premiums if you were just an employee, and then we had premiums if you were employee and spouse both employed. And there were times when we had it free for employee and, you know, moved it across as far as, you know, just trying to think about how we're allocating the benefits.
Do we have anybody come in and do any kind of workshop or sessions with employees on how to effectively use their insurance, or is that just kind of up to them? I mean, because, well, I guess what I'm getting at, based on my experience with other things, but what we've had with some other groups is their employees weren't properly educated with how to adequately use their insurance. And so what would happen was they had, and I'm not saying this is the case here, but what would happen is they would have something minor. Well, insurance is paying for it, so they just go to the emergency room instead of, you know, maybe just going to Teladoc or something like that and using those services, you know, which helps your claims. So I'm just wondering, as far as from an education standpoint, if we provide anything like that to educate our employees on the insurance plans they actually have, because as we all know, insurance is kind of confusing. And so unless you understand how it works and all the parts to it as an employee, it's a little hard to navigate. So just a question I had.
We talked about and how the insurance piece was left with the last salary relations meeting was that we would recommend to the board that we stay wept through this year. And then early October, November, be getting premiums rates from Wisbate and the state plan. Mr. Kramer and I and Kim Flock a couple years ago, we had consultants in and talked about going back to self-funding and things like that, which at that time were not feasible. But we then talked about tomorrow needing to determine which we can offer 3 plans. So looking at the plan options and based upon the plans that we offer, then having WEP provide some informational settings, kind of like what you're referring to, because there's a fear or hesitation that if we would go to a high deductible health plan, that employees don't understand what's covered, what's not, how to navigate that. And there's a fear with high deductible health plans that they may just not seek the medical attention they might need.
Well, and it's surprising a lot of people don't even understand deductibles. I mean, they don't understand that you have to pay that much in order for it to even kick in. And so, yeah, this just an education piece, I think might be beneficial.
I would say probably prior to 3 years ago and prior to our implementation of the larger copay amount, there was certainly less diligence in regards to being mindful. I think as we move towards higher deductibles and larger copays, there's been much more education. Now, I think if we decide to go to a high deductible plan, absolutely have to make sure our employees are educated on that. Because yes, that is a huge concern of where if we have a larger percentage of employees going on a high deductible plan, they just don't seek medical attention until it's
Major.
exactly. I think the most significant thing that we saw with this increase has to do a lot with the elective surgeries and that increasing quite dramatically over the last 12 months.
If we did have a educational piece to insurance, like sometimes I hear talk about, I don't even know how to say it, but there's some sort of, once in a while, isn't there student? Sometimes I hear things about student insurance, like a student in the district has the option to sign up for injury insurance, even if it's not through the sport, through Wyoming SSA. But
That's student accident insurance, and that's an informational item that typically hits the agenda in May or June. That's something that is provided for families to sign up with no cost implication of the district. It's strictly on the families, but it's an accident insurance. And if they do sign up and then they're injured on the playground or at an activity or a sport or something like that, it provides that coverage. But that's separate from the insurance that we're providing to our employees. But the student accident insurance is becoming more popular and more common.
Didn't mean to derail.
No. Perfect questions. Hope you're gonna be here tomorrow, by the way. Okay. And so then the last slide, I like to end it with just kind of those unknowns. We've talked about many of these tonight, but we will have the final settlement of the ag building that we think we know what it's gonna look like, but until we totally get done, we found little things along the way. So that's definitely an unknown. Recalibration of education funding, we talked about that. We have not talked about, and I probably should have alluded to this at the beginning. Everything that I've talked about tonight has been general fund, meaning that that's our largest bucket of money. But we also have those other funds that you see on the cash balance report each month, one of which is federal. with the federal money, and those do pay for some of our positions, next year is the last year of CARES funding. So we don't know what positions. Excuse me, I about made it through. We don't know which positions will need to revert back into general fund. And then we don't know how long special ed and transportation will remain at 100%.
How long has it been at 100%?
It's been at 100% for a long time, but there's been look back periods. So they've capped it. As to the max that we would receive on a yearly basis.
They took off that cap 2 years ago, Marcy.
Yeah.
And so we've been at 100%, which has helped us because when we went into that cap year, that was one of our lower expenditure years. And so coming off of that, recalibrating to where we are has helped us significantly.
What was the cap at?
They had set it at the previous expenditure from the fiscal year before. And so you were capped at whatever that was. And ironically, that was the year that we were able to make reductions. And so we were having to live within that cap period that was reduced from previous years. Had they taken 2 previous years before, we actually would have been in a better financial position in regards to that. So it's interesting to, Wyoming is very unique in their school funding. It is not like other states in regards to that, and the formulas and the caps, and quite honestly, the 100% reimbursement for special education and transportation is absolutely that doesn't exist anywhere. So we're very grateful of that, but it does add a different layer to how you plan, and because you just don't know when there might be that gap. And so you kind of model through that, make sure you're watching where you're at, making appropriate use of funds, but then also keeping in mind, where is that cap going to be set at some certain time?
So approximately how many positions are covered by the CARES?
15, I believe, both certified and classified. So I'm going to open it up to you folks as to things you want to talk about, questions you have. We have Sarah and Matt that are representatives. If you guys have things you want some feedback from the rest of the board, or anything else you guys want information on in regards to the budget and funding.
And so it's looking like 2, 3, 4 years down the road, CARES funds go to 0. I was just trying to roughly put that number in my head, but
I think there's a couple things to think about, because there are some of those people that will be tenured. Some that won't. Some positions that may be deemed noted to go into general fund. Some positions maybe that were just COVID related, that those positions wouldn't go into the general fund, but hoping for attrition to potentially be able to move some of those people into positions. So there's a lot of kind of moving thoughts and pieces with that, but important that it be on people's radar, that it will be a conversation.
One of the biggest things that we talked about administratively from the beginning was those specific positions being a trial period, determining which ones had the most value. And if those were deemed to have a very high value, what other positions that might already currently be general funded then don't match that value. And then therefore should be the ones that we try to take a look at and evaluate whether that is absolutely necessary for that position. That has been the assignment for the principals over the last 2 years through those CARES dollars. And some of that also has been assisted through other grants. It will be certain buildings will see an effect at a higher rate than others because of how they've utilized it. But also some of those have been just put in as mechanisms to maintain where there might have been reductions 3 years ago in those positions. But in order to maintain the services, they felt we don't want to go down that road by saying we're not going to accept these dollars, but we do have a plan in place to have that reduction take place. Anything else? I think one of the biggest factors as we go into salary relations, probably for trustee chairs and trustee Sussex, is a general feeling on carryover. As we're looking at that, we've kind of gone in with the goal and looking at it. When you look at that number of 18.29%, that will be exceeding what in traditional years has been an expected carryover for school districts, which I appreciate. I know other states don't have that cap, so you'll see much larger numbers. The money is there for a reason. The money is to be spent on education, not in the coffers of a school district. How do we then appropriately expend those dollars along with maintaining enough room in future years for situations where insurance doesn't, a project isn't completed and we have to carry it over for that following year. That safety net. In saying that, some of the things that will probably be discussed next year will be that long-term cost when we look at putting towards base, or short-term costs when we look at retention dollars to retain staff within positions, and how that kind of works. And then what we're comfortable in regarding the carryover. My personal opinion is that there never should be a time in which we're in our current situation where we would be exceeding 15% carryover. I do strongly believe and would advocate highly, if it weren't for COVID, that number is appropriately central. And coming from a state that didn't have that and saw what could happen and where monies are just kept in coffers and not expended on education like it should be, that is a good safety net. We're in a position where some other districts might not be, where they're going to need to extend over that 15% budget wise. I think we're in a position to where that is a good point to aim, especially within our increasing enrollment. If we did not have increasing enrollment this last year, I would say it probably needs to be even lower than that. But that's where I would be comfortable in at least taking a look. But there's a lot of factors in that, as we've discussed tonight, with insurance and physicians coming with CARES dollars. There's a lot of moving parts that will be further discussed tomorrow, where the two trustees seated to my left will certainly understand how that gets to be a little bit challenging. And as you enter into those summer conversations, outside of salary, the quantification of some of the benefits and items that will come out aren't as easily quantifiable in relation to where we're at. And that's why Marcy's job in budgeting and getting a close number is rather difficult with the school, because there, as she referenced, when you look at just 3 positions within the school district not being filled this last year, that was pretty significant in the amount that was able to go towards carryover this last year. Especially when you're considering that we have upwards of about 530 employees that 3 people can make. Not filling that position, that's significant of a movement within your balance. And so all those things adding up, coming in with kind of just a general idea of where we're comfortable at, and kind of just matching both of those, because it is a great committee in that everybody enters that room with the idea of, we want the district to be in a sound financial position. Teachers, teacher associates, cooks, custodians, everyone wants Goshen County Schools to be in a healthy financial position. And how do we balance all of those things out by still keeping in mind insurance costs, in addition to salary increases and things to maintain what we've seen through attracting new teachers into our community.
So are you looking at this from a 5-day lens as far as getting this budget, or do you anticipate a change with board?
What I have here is mirroring the 5-day, in that the only cost savings I see the capability for is some savings in subs. And truly not knowing what that will look like. The sub line item, we may have some opportunity for savings, but what I've heard from districts is that the lights continue to stay on because of offering intervention, remediation, enrichment opportunities on Fridays. That there's not a lot of cost savings. We would still run buses. Our food service staff are really the ones that you continue to hear from. And they're part of another fund. Their salaries come out of a different fund. They're not coming out of this one, but there's that $50,000 that we could potentially need to transfer to food service.
The other piece with that too is our commitment to our hourly employees on maintaining where they're at.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we've committed to. That's the expectation that has been clearly communicated within salary relations and our commitment to that.
Thank you. That's kind of what I was.
That's what I kind of figured.
Marcy, I just wanted to, you say 1% on this carryover, roughly 300,000, is that right? So we, at this point with 18%, we're like $900,000. What 15% would be essentially.
There's 2 things to ponder,
Sure.
because there's the 1,358,000 that and then getting to 15%, yes, is 300.
One thing before we go too far away from it, Trustee Sacedo, I just want to make sure and clarify, because there has been somewhat some confusion about what does that mean on keeping them. That means that the hours that they are gold sheeted this year for, our gold sheets are more or less idea of what an employee works for a week. If they have a gold sheet that indicates they will work for 32 hours, they will be given the opportunity to work 32 hours next year.
Thank you.
And then just for clarification, the continuation of the food program on Fridays would be at the board's discretion if you decide to pull money from the general fund to do that.
Anything else to come before the board this evening? Okay. That we're adjourned. Sure. That's I would add Chris.
I will look through my email, that's their homework.
No,
they won't, wait.
No, I can get it.
Supporting.
I'll leave it like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last few days have been kind of.
I can't. I can do that. Yeah, no, I can do that.
That might.
Yeah.
Right?
But I don't know that it.
No, maybe. Have a good evening, guys.
See you bright and early. So what and how can we? Explain.
Okay. Executive session. Excellent.
But I'm like, so right now,
Thank you, ma'am.
we can't explain this is why that decision is made. These were the conversations.
You will, you'll have that opportunity to make this. Here's the story on that. That's, and our discussion around it.
Unless I wouldn't even know where to start. Especially the board.
Well, and you can't, and that's something. You can't. Time really, that's. Did you hear the story? Yeah. Yeah. Sound good? Good.
Let's just make so much value of it. You don't- Understanding how.
And.
Because I think most of the major confusion in this happens, it's like,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, oh, absolutely. It's absolutely. That's where you're. The balance of. The biggest one is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for everybody, that's not. It's not an issue. It is.
it doesn't hurt. I don't want to use it.
No, but it
But
does,
like, I mean, like, it's not the where every dollar goes.
No.
It's that-
it is our bottom line, where are we? That's the importance. Right there. And if we're hearing and listening to all of that, that should be the matter. If we're listening and the committee as a whole, including teachers, including all of those members decided, you know what, this is not all this, then absolutely. That's what-
And we feel kind of, we brought it up about the- and then like, we're going back to 10%.
Or they are.
But could we be like, oh, I don't- we have an increase in our pool? Real quick,
You
before you
could.
take the money back?
You could.
So we could potentially like save up money and do some other way off something. like that?
Other than the fact that your teachers were not having increases in salaries.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
But
But you
you
would
talked
get
about
a.
like the square footage, right? Like.
Oh, that's a great question. That.
So we couldn't
No,
say
good.
we need a new ad shop.
No.
Because that's in the place.
No, you would not be able to, no.
Oh,
I had stuff, yeah,
Okay, okay.
because I took,
You don't want people watching. You set up chairs.
See how it's going on.
that's all. I don't think it's on his camera,
Oh, okay, okay.
because I had stopped the recording too of it and everything, so.